Hello and welcome to Revenue Insights. Today, I'm joined by Sebastian van Heyningen. He's the president of Central Metric and has worked across pretty much the entirety of the sales function across his career. Sebastian, it's great to chat to you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I'm really interested to know, because I know from your LinkedIn, you've worked as an SDR, gone to an AE, now you're president of Central Metric. Love that title, by the way. What's your story? How have you got to this point?
Yeah, I mean, how much time do you have? I'll try to keep it brief, but yeah, basically I came into the world, the exciting world of SaaS through the SDR function. I was just out of school and kind of internship hopping, not knowing what I wanted to do with my life, but knowing that I had a huge student loan balloon hanging over my head. And so very much too late in my college career, I decided I cared about getting a job. And so I had about 3 different internships that summer after I graduated. One of them was at a small startup called Namely, helping the SDR team prospect and run their blog. And through a kind of a stroke of luck, you know what, we were all out one day drinking, and the CEO and the head of sales were looking at each other like, oh man, we really need SDRs. Where are we going to find SDRs? And I just like slowly put my hand up, and that got me my first job offer as an SDR.
I love that. And then the rest is history. Right?
The rest is history. Yeah. A lot of ups and downs and sideways from there.
Yeah. So obviously, yes, you started as an SDR, went into being an AE. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And then obviously how you've gone from an AE to what you're doing today.
Yeah, I mean, well, I never was just strict AE. I was a full cycle seller. When I was actually at Namely, they offered me an AE promotion, and I looked at the room full of AEs, and I was like, "No, I can't do it." Yeah. There's a cultural homogeny that takes place in a given SaaS organization where everybody's from the same crew, or your dad knows his dad, or our cousins went to college, and basically the type of person that I saw as an AE, I didn't see myself as that type of person. I wasn't a Wolf of Wall Street extra, basically. And so I turned down the AE position to pursue the SDR manager track, which was an incredible mistake because nobody will hire you to be a manager if you haven't already been a manager. And so I kind of got trapped in that cul-de-sac for a few years, took a few player coach roles, took that full cycle sales role that I was talking about. And then again, through another incredible stroke of luck, I ended up as a consultant at a large organization called Scaled. Literally, I walked into a job interview at another business, and somebody that I went to college with happened to be a Scaled consultant. So he just saw me physically, flagged me down. The next day, I was talking to the CEO of Scaled. The next week, I was on a plane to Columbus to deliver an ICP presentation to a client of theirs. So literally, my interview process to get into SaaS and to become a consultant was the same thing. It was like, fuck, we need somebody. Can you do this?
It's the classic, not what you know, but who you know.
Literally. Yeah. And I kind of grow in those environments. I'm a very learn by doing type of person. So that was the best environment. Just toss me into the fire and then come back in 30 minutes. And usually I'm cooked well.
And then obviously, I think just to kind of round your background off, now you're at Central Metric. Could you just give a bit of an overview of what it is that you're doing there?
Yeah. And I think it's a good, tail off to my story here is, at Scaled, we were very process focused. We would do playbooks, onboarding plans, sales training, very focused on the people and how they were selling. And something that my co-founder, Kevin Lewis, and I noticed is that no matter what project we were on, there was always an element of updating the CRM, installing a new piece of software, documenting the process in a way that everyone can see. And so this was before RevOps was really even a popular term in SaaS. But, we looked at each other and decided like we should be focused on the tech and process more, rather than the people side of things. And so we started, 3 years ago, what was, two sales ops freelancers kind of at the dawn of RevOps as a popular topic. And again, tremendous stroke of luck. We ended up doing this work at the same time that this work was being recognized as very important to businesses.
Amazing. Something that I'm actually really keen, and thank you so much for adding the color. Something actually I'm really keen to ask, based off of what you were saying before. I guess the old school A profile, right? Is everything that you described is almost the stereotype in my head as well. Do you think that that's kind of a world that still exists today, or do you think it's kind of evolving to a more progressive style of sales team and sales process?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually talking about this recently with someone because I think we've done a very good job at diversifying the SDR floor. People are changing careers, becoming SDRs. I've seen really successful SDRs without even having a high school degree. We are finally opening the door and allowing these people because it's sales. You don't need a classic degree to know how to sell. But we're finally letting people in the door. And like, I've seen a lot of those teams changing and companies dedicated to, we source diverse SDR talent. But I have not seen that for AEs. I have not seen any organization that's dedicated to diversifying the AE floor. I'm not seeing a big flood of people coming from outside of the industry to become AEs. I think eventually we'll get back around. If we put a huge ton of diverse people on the SDR floor in 2 to 3 years, many of them will be AEs. But we're kind of hoping rather than acting towards that outcome.
Yeah, it's a really interesting situation where I suppose on one side of it, you kind of go with the assumption that those SDRs rather that are, from more diverse backgrounds you would assume inevitably go on to become the AEs of the future.
Yeah.
But I wonder, do you think that, the modern sales process or the way that sales is done at the minute, whether it's going to embrace that, or do you think it's very much going to remain very much the same where, it's your classic style AE?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you need a function or a department to be diverse, I think the first thing you need to do is diversify their leadership. And so we haven't seen a lot of diverse AE managers, sales directors, chief revenue officers. I mean, I held an event recently amplifying Black voices in RevOps, and I could only find 5 people to sit on the panel, and like these are people that can hire diverse AEs and build diverse teams, but they're not being elevated and given the opportunity to lead and grow the team the same way that, this other group, this homogenous group has been in the past. So yeah, I think it's up and down, but we are moving in the right direction, but not quickly enough.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be one of those. I mean, we kind of laugh about it, but it is concerning, right? That you don't have those profiles in the positions that are actually going to be able to help bring in that change. So something that I wanted to ask in very much like a similar vein, of those sales leaders who are in that position at the minute, and based off of your experience working with a number of different companies now, what typically what are they doing wrong consistently? Is there like a common trend of things that you're looking at going, it seems so simple to you, but you keep going into a number of companies where it's like, they just keep doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of symptoms to the same problem, which is a lack of empathy and understanding. And you can extend it to your employees. You're kind of pushing them to the edge. You're not supporting them. You're expecting outcomes that are beyond the resources that you're giving them. So you're not being empathetic of your employees. And then you could extend that to your buyer. Your buyer journey is fragmented. You're forcing people to take steps that they don't want to take because you're not having empathy for your buyer or your customer. And then internally on kind of the RevOps side of things, you're building a process that it pleases the stakeholders and the executives. But the people managing the tech, the people acting on the tech, the software platform that you are building that is your sales process is not enjoyed by the users, which is the sales reps, the marketing reps, the CS reps, et cetera, because you don't have empathy for what they're going through every day. So I think if everyone would just sit down and try to consider somebody else's perspective, which I think is what you need to do if you're trying to incentivize that person to do something. It's on you to make that choice attractive to them. Then I think we would, solve a lot of these problems because I think they all stem down to that same, like, I want it my way. I need to hit my quota. My board needs me to hit this goal, rather than thinking outwardly and focusing on the person that matters to you because you're trying to give them value and get value in return.
I sense that there's definitely, a disconnect really from what's happening on the front lines and what's happening obviously up at the boardroom level. And so what I'm wondering, and I'd love to get your opinion on now, I completely agree with what you're saying from an empathy perspective, but I suppose from the perspective of those executives at the top, what they're looking at are the cold, hard numbers at the end of the day, how much pipeline you're generating. So, coming at it from, I guess, the AE perspective, what more can be done then to actually, prove through that approach, taking the more, I was going to say empathic. I don't even know if that's the right word, but, taking a more empathetic approach to it.
Yeah. And I think the leaders deserve some empathy too, right? They have a lot of pressure. They're trying to prove their hypothesis that this company should even exist in some cases. And that's not easy. You can kind of get blinders on. And I've seen that now as a founder, that there's a number that we're chasing. And if I don't hit it, the empathy in my brain drops. I'm just like, why didn't I get there? And you start to get frustrated rather than looking for solutions. And I think, kind of the way that we work with our clients is I think a little more empathetic than the norm. Something as simple as you're putting in a new piece of sales technology, run it by your team. Ask them, do you need this? How would it improve your day? You have that rep maybe, I think you see the memes, AEs hate putting data in the CRM. Sit with that AE for a day and figure out what processes they're taking. Are they writing it physically in a note? Are they putting it in, a Google Doc? Like, there are ways that you can find a middle ground. It's not just you forcing compliance, and it's not just them having complete control over your process. It's some middle ground where, nobody is as happy as they possibly could be, but everybody is at least rowing in the same direction and kind of supporting each other.
Yeah. And I think, I think a lot of this stems from some quite big shifts in the way that sellers actually sell. And as such, you kind of touched on the buyer journey before, but I'd love to get your opinion on, how that buyer journey has changed from your perspective, and also what impact that is having, on the people on the front lines who are actually trying to sell, given all of the changes that we're seeing in the market.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you hear it a lot, and I've heard it ever since I started. The buyer is changing. They're more informed than ever. They don't have to speak to you in order to gather the information necessary to make their decision. And so, where does that leave you as the salesperson? You're no longer the person who, jumps in out of the street and is like, here's something you've never heard about. The only way you can find out more information is you can ask me. And here's a tailored list of testimonials that I knew would be attractive to you. You kind of were selling in this limited space. You had control of the information. Whereas now you're seeing buyers go to review websites. You've seen a lot of the dark funnel stuff where people are talking about you in a way that cannot be tracked or optimized. And so I think as that has happened, the response has been to make a much more complex journey. And so I always think about this in terms of flow charts, right? I think the kind of premature sales process or before this would be a flow chart with 4 to 5 inputs, a straight line, and then 2 to 3 outputs. You come in through the website, you come in through a cold call, you come in through an ad, you go through the exact same process, you exit either by becoming a customer or by saying no. Whereas now there might be 20 inputs on this side. You've got different types of ads. You've got your podcast, you've got community, you've got Slack, you've got LinkedIn. There are more ways to enter, and people are leaving before the end. And you need to find a way to re-engage those people, keep them interested, keep their eyes on you, and while also providing them value. And so throughout the entire process, you need to think about how someone can come in, come out, come back in, and you need to plan ahead so that you can deliver a good experience and deliver all that value. And so there's been a lot more technologies that help with this. People are now integrating their product into their process. So, you sign up for a free trial, you take, X, Y, and Z actions in the product. Now this, qualifies you for a different sales motion than if you came off the street or if you came in through a Facebook ad. So it's really just a matter of complicating our sales processes, which makes, a function like ours in RevOps very important, because the more complex a system gets, the more knowledge you'll need to manage and improve that system over time.
So given the fact that, every sales process is pretty much unique, any business that you go into, where, and particularly in the context of, clients that you're working with, when you go in and obviously take stock of what the process looks like and what is already in place, how do you start to make sense of that? You talked about having, potentially 20 different ins and, there's potentially even 20 different outs at the other end. How do you start to make sense of it? And how do you start to actually build and plan and create process around that?
Yeah, that's the funnest part of my job, man, is being able to talk to people. And I think it starts anecdotally. Talk to your leader and tell them to trace a single lead through your process from start to finish. Mm-hmm. That is one question that it could take 45 minutes to answer. And that information is very important and very juicy. And then while you're along the way, mentioning, this is how a lead goes through our process, you're going to notice the gaps yourself. At this point, an SDR calls, but we've noticed it takes a little long for the SDRs to call. Boom, there's a part of the process that we can improve. At this point, the SDR hands the deal off to an AE, but we've noticed that our qualification rate at that stage is not strong enough. Boom, there's another point in your process that you can improve. And so I think if you just start with, tell me the story of how a human being interacts with your business and becomes a customer. And then from there, you allow that conversation to kind of tangent out when it needs to. And then you just write it all down. I love Excel, Google Sheets as a way to kind of think about this in a row by row, stage by stage type of way. And once you have it written down, that's your blueprint that you can take to your CRM vendor or your marketing automation vendor. And you say, this is how we want to move people through our process. Can your technology do that? And then, of course, you install the technology, you iterate over time, and you make sure that, above all else, you have standardized inputs. So that way you can trust your reporting and then make the changes that you need along the way. So that was a long way pretty much of saying how we do things.
I actually was going to say it's a beautifully simple way actually of it might have been a slightly long way, but I think it is actually a really simple way of starting to approach it, because when you initially start to describe it, to me in my head, I'm like, oh God, this looks like massive and complicated.
Yeah, spider web.
How the hell do I even start to make sense of this, right? So actually simplifying it down is such an important first step. Now, something that I came across while listening to some of the stuff that you've kind of produced in the past, I know that you've talked a lot about meeting employees where they're at. So, being flexible to their needs. And I think we've touched on it a little bit already in terms of understanding where they're at in terms of the buyer journey. So for sales leaders who are obviously used to a very different way of working, and it's very much, You know, I'm going to bring in people that are going to make sure that they hit their number. You know, perhaps it's calls delivered. Do you have any advice for those sales leaders on how they can start to adapt? But also, can you touch on as well why it's so valuable to actually start to adapt to, you know, the fact that AEs are changing these days as well?
Yeah. I think, I mean, I like to think in metaphors or allegories or kind of see similarities in things. And yeah, I'm a Patriots fan. I love American football. The coach of the Patriots is 70 odd years old. When he started his career as an NFL coach, social media did not exist. And so for the longest time, I think it was somewhat banned in the clubhouse. And obviously that led to a glut in talent recruitment because all the cool young athletes were going other people. And, you know, I'm oversimplifying this 100%, but essentially the coach of the Patriots changed his mind and decided to allow some level of social media in his clubhouse because he recognized that the times were changing. And I think it's that similar mindset that we need to bring into sales. I'm not saying that AEs need to be allowed to be on Facebook all day, but figure out what that version of that is for you, you know, for your team. Is it changing the way that you run President's Club and inviting more reps onto it? Is it opening your sales kickoff to other departments so that your sales team can see the perspective and actually learn that empathy for their other kind of team members? Because, you know, AEs tend to push in deals that the rest of the company doesn't want. And then I think just there's a lack sometimes of, or I guess there's, when you manage a team, you're managing the performance of the team, but you're also managing the career of that person. And so you have to have their interests in mind and you have to prepare them for the next role or they're going to leave and they're going to churn. You know, I've been that rep where I'm like, hey, blinking red light, this is where I want to go next. This is what I care about. These are the skills that I want. And it all fell on deaf ears. So what did I do? I left. And that's expensive. You know, they had to pay to replace me. The pipeline I generated was lost. And, you know, several months went by before somebody was up to probably the same activity levels even that I was at. And so it's literally just take that business decision of it's expensive to replace your employees and then run it through some emotion of why are these employees leaving and what can I do to make them stay? It's sales. You know, you are selling your AE on why they should stay with you and why it's important for them to grow with you rather than chase that 15, 20% salary bump somewhere else.
I actually want to build on your metaphor with an example of ways that that sales is changing, and something that I'm sure you can give a great perspective on is the use of LinkedIn and you know, social media as part of the sales process. Because I mean it's something that we at Ebster use quite actively, and there's definitely even conflicting opinions within our business of what the purpose of it is, right? So to you, as you know, someone who I know actively uses it, what is your perspective on it and where is the value in doing it?
Yeah, I think that's huge. And I'm sorry I didn't mention it earlier. You know, I think we could have mentioned it on why the sales process is changing because, you know, that's one way to sell now is to be an expert on your field on LinkedIn. And so that is really the value that I see. It's more of a branding tool. You know, I don't see it as lead gen. You know, I'm not going to massively blast campaigns out of, hey, talk to me real quick. I see it as demand gen. You know, here is what I do that attracts eyeballs, people paying attention, partners, referrals, community. All of those people are commenting, engaging with the content that I'm putting out on LinkedIn. There is no, we're getting X amount of leads, we're getting X amount of revenue from this profile strategy at my current business. I think there should be in the future, but the value that we have seen from LinkedIn has been on the demand gen side of things. It's having podcasts like this, getting involved with groups like RevOps Co-op, and kind of creating this scrum of people around you that say, when a HubSpot problem comes for our case, or a Salesforce problem comes, who do I talk to? Multiple people will point you in my direction. And we've had that where we get a referral, we go through the sales process, and towards the end of the sales process, they say, well, I wanted to look at other vendors, but everyone I talked to said to talk to Seb. And here we are, staring at a proposal that is about to be signed. And so I think that is, at least for me, what I see the value of LinkedIn is. It's your place to be a subject matter expert in the public square in a way that generates demand.
Yeah. And I think I completely agree. And I think getting that across is definitely often the challenge, because it's, from a marketer's perspective, I regularly say, please don't just post out, our next ebook or whatever and just like, hey, we just created this. I'm like, no, no one's going to care. It's
Hashtag ebook.
And I like to put it in a way where it's just think about how you engage with social media. When you're flipping through TikTok or LinkedIn or whatever, what content is it that you're engaging with? Some people are funny. Some people are not. Some people are, and I think in your case, educational and actually want to teach people, right? In your words, being a subject matter expert.
Yeah. And I try to be funny too. Yeah, I think I'm funny.
I think that's a matter of opinion, mate, to be honest. But granted, right? And so actually something that I'm pushing is, you got to find your niche, right? And it's to the point where, and I think the educational side of it works so well. So because that buyer journey has changed, right? And people are coming into contact with your content at different times. And so how I like to describe it is, there'll be points where from our perspective, it might be that people want to improve their forecasting actually. Yeah. Great. Well, what you actually want is you've done a post around it, or perhaps a video talking about, perhaps your frustrations around it. Perhaps you make a funny video off the back of it. Yeah. But it's that type of stuff that's far more likely to embed in the mind of your audience and your ICP. So that when the time comes, they're like, man, I actually really need to fix that problem. So I'm sure I heard someone or I saw someone talking about this before, and much in the same way. And then it's just like, yes, I know who it was. And then actually it's more the case as they come to you. And that is, I think the difficulty of it is being able to attribute that, to be able to prove the value of it.
Yeah, that's when your strategy is too tied to the dark funnel to really report on, because you don't know how those conversations are happening. When we're talking to lead gen vendors right now, just kind of see what they offer, and they keep asking me is, how many leads do you typically get? And I say anywhere between 1 and 10 referrals come into our business every month. It could be 1. So far this month, it's been 4. But we'll see. I can't predict that. I can't bring any regularity to that, but it has been an integral part of our business. So, it's not to say that you should take out the cold email, the cold call approach, and you should still reach out to your buyer, especially if you have value to offer them. But this is kind of that air cover. When you do reach out to them cold, the first thing they're going to look up is they're going to Google you, or they're going to click the link to your profile that's already in your email. And then your profile comes up, and look at that. You are, X amount of followers, X amount of posts every day, talking about the exact thing that you can help with them with over and over and over again. And then boom, there's your social proof.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting that it's kind of now reaching through to sales, because obviously from a marketing perspective, it reminds me a lot of classic, both organic social, but organic search as well. Yeah, where you're just there and you're visible at the time when people are searching for you. Yeah. So again, from an episode perspective, it's when people are searching for a forecasting tool, it's us being there with content, and it's like, oh yeah, I have heard of you guys, right? Yeah. I want to move on a little bit and really start to get into, you name dropped RevOps Co-op, shout out. I know you're really active in the community. So over the past 3 months, what have been some of the hot topics that you've seen or big trends that are happening in the community at the minute?
Yeah, PLG is the new acronym that everyone's talking about. Product-led growth. I kind of alluded to it earlier, but it's a simple concept that is incredibly difficult to put together in practice. In theory, right? If someone logs into your website for free and touches all of the buttons that are next to the "I'm ready to buy" button, then you should probably talk to them. Find out why they're pressing those buttons and give them a reason to press the "I'm ready to pay" button. But in practice, that involves, in some cases, ripping all of your data out of your product, putting it into a data lake, converting that data, shooting it over to your CRM. Your CRM then has automation that tells the salespeople that these actions happened. And that's if you're using a software. Maybe you're manually exporting and manually importing that data. So I think that is the number one topic that I've seen is product-led growth. And, what we're trying to figure out is, what's the services version of that? How can I offer a free trial of my consulting in a way that engages and provides value so that I can convert that trial customer in the future? And so I think that's really what I've seen a lot of is like, we're not going for customers right off the bat. We're just going for advocates, people on our platform, friendlies. And those are the people that will teach us how to sell to this market and give us the insights that we need to actually go to market. 2-3 years ago, it was ABM. I think people are still taking ABM very seriously, but PLG is the new 3-letter acronym that rules RevOps right now.
I'm curious to know, do you think, obviously, as you say, like really hot topic at the minute, do you think it's possible to pivot to being PLG, like product-led? Or do you think it's better kind of built in and really baked into your business strategy from the very beginning?
Yeah, I mean, with all these things, it's better to do them first. Same thing with RevOps. It's better to install some level of RevOps first rather than clean it up after because tech debt, data debt, process debt, it accumulates quickly over time. And you need to handle that before you pivot. And so I've seen some companies pivot, but it is expensive and it is time consuming. And so you have to make that decision yourself of, are you open to this? And it will be a disruption to your daily process. Are you down to commit a product resource to build a freemium portal into your platform? Are you down to put certain amount of your salespeople's time chasing down product leads rather than content leads or cold leads? So I think every business makes their own decision, but it is possible to pivot. And I think there are some really thought-provoking companies doing that right now.
Any that you're willing to name?
I mean, public wise, I don't know if they pivoted, but I love Airtable's model, Notion's model, of, just get in here, sign in. I don't care. Calendly does this too. Just get in. Once you hit a certain point, we're going to flag you and say, it's time. Put your credit card down. You need a third meeting type for Calendly. Put your credit card down. You need a really complex set of automations in Notion. Put your credit card down. So I love that aspect of like, come on in, the water's fine. And then when you get to a certain point of like, this is a resource I'm pulling out, and it actually is, costing the business something, then I better pay for that resource. And now the business that I'm engaged with, they know that I need it because I spent 4 months on their platform trying to figure out a free way to do that.
All right. I want to ask if you could recommend one book to someone in sales, and they could be a sales leader or an A. Take this whatever way you want. What would it be?
It would be "Thank You for Arguing" by Jay Heinrich.
Oh, I love it. Why?
Because I think people they conflate arguing with fighting. People say, I don't want to argue. But that in itself is an argument. An argument is just you using, words to try and convince someone of something or push them towards an action. It doesn't have to be a negative thing to argue. In sales, all we do is argue. We're presenting value and we're creating a project plan for somebody, and we want them to do that thing, so we're arguing for it. And so that book goes through the different, it kind of takes arguing seriously as a practice, and it goes through tactics, methodologies, ways to think about arguing so that you are presenting the choice that you want made in the best possible light. I'd say it's towing the line on manipulation, but I think for a good cause, arguing is always a good tactic to use.
I love that. That's a great suggestion. Okay, last question. And
right.
Because I'm super curious, your life goals are to win the Super Bowl as the owner of an NFL team and become the world's most unfamous billionaire. What does that mean?
Yeah, so it's two-pronged reason there. Mm-hmm. The first is I wanted to be in the NFL as a kid. I'm now 30 years old. I'm never going to play in the NFL. I'm past it.
You're gonna have dreams, right?
Yeah. I'm also never going to be a coach, because that's another thing where I would have to dedicate 20 years of my life starting now to even get onto the ground floor. And so the way my mind went is I still want to win the Super Bowl. That moment of bliss, holding the trophy with the confetti coming down, I still have that as an ideal in my mind. But who gets the trophy first? The owner of the team gets the trophy first. And so going back to the Patriots reference, Robert Kraft is somebody that, obviously as a Patriots fan, I absolutely love, because I've seen him hold a trophy above his head about 6 times now. And so that's the way that I am now pursuing that dream of winning the Super Bowl. It's buying a team and winning the Super Bowl with that team. To that end, I've had to learn a lot about wealth development and wealth management.
I was going to say, how's it going for you currently?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Okay. I'm accumulating wealth at a faster rate than my peers. But as I've studied this, and I studied economics in college, I'm starting to think maybe being a billionaire is not the most morally just goal in life. Yeah. And I'm noticing that some of the richest people are spending all of their time divesting their wealth. So you spend your whole life slowly building up some huge amount of wealth that is, literally, because we operate under capitalism, taking resources from other people and accumulating it under you. And then when you get to a point where you're happy with it, you then just slowly distribute it out like charity. Like, that doesn't feel right to me. And so I would like to pursue a method of wealth building and ownership that I don't have to go back later and give it all out. I already have people that are partially owning everything. So yes, if I kept everything under me, I would be a billionaire. But because I didn't, it's $1 billion of wealth spread out among everybody that I've worked with and that has helped me along the way. And I think the way that I'm chasing this recently is if you buy a house and you have a mortgage, somebody's paying you rent, they're paying your mortgage. They should get a piece of your house, which is a controversial opinion of mine that nobody supports other than renters. But I think there's an example, of if I'm paying your mortgage, I'm paying the value of your house for you. I should get a piece of your house. If I'm working on your business, generating revenue for your business, I should get a piece of your business. In the same way, that's the way I think out of things that I quote unquote own. I don't really own them. The community owns them. So how can I make sure that the community has their piece before I get to absurd levels of wealth that, no single person should have?
I love it. It sounds far more interesting than just being the owner of the Patriots. So.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe I'll drop that goal in favor of this one.
Sebastian, thank you so much again. It's been great to talk to you. Before we go, obviously, I know you're super active on LinkedIn, but alongside that, where can they find you?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is the best way. If not, then type my name into the search box of your local Slack community. I'm probably in there. And yeah, otherwise, reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's my most active. And my email is there if you want to take it off LinkedIn.
Awesome. We'll put links to that as well as RevOps Corp, who you named Rod as well, down in the show notes.
Yeah.
Sebastian, thank you again for joining me. It's been really fascinating to chat to you, and thank you to everyone that's listened to the episode today. We'll catch you next week.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This was fun.